I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life, comics, movies, and TV.
Welcome to Hard NOC Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
I'm Dom Ma.
Hey, Britney Monet and Dom Ma. We have a special guest joining us for the podcast this week. Since we're going to be talking about Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, I thought I should probably bring on, number one, the first guy I talked to as soon as I got out of the movie theater. And since I am not the Hong Kong cinema martial arts movie expert, I wanted to have someone who has way more knowledge about those two things than I do, because I think they're relevant to Shang-Chi. So please welcome back to the podcast, after a very, very, very long hiatus, my brother, Raymond Chow.
Hi. Hi, Raymond.
Hello, hello.
Full disclosure to people listening, we've been told that we sound similar, so we may have to just preface every time I'm speaking or Raymond's speaking. But welcome, Raymond. How are you?
I'm good. Maybe I should try and do a voice, and then people will tell us apart.
In my opinion, you don't sound that similar, but no, you're not similar.
Once it's on audio, once it's just audio, nah. Our parents can't tell us apart.
That's true.
Well, you can just preface with "This is Raymond" or "This is Keith" before every single thing you say, including or
yeah,
huh.
I'll just speak in Cantonese for as much as possible.
Hey,
there you go.
That way you
That's
can tell.
a classy move.
There you go.
There you go. So, other disclaimer, we are going to be spoiling the shit out of Shang-Chi. Brittany and Dominic were like warning me, like, maybe we should maybe we should steer clear of spoilers since not everyone has seen the movie yet. There's going to be, I think, a 45-day window before it moves to Disney+. But half the things I want to talk about involve spoilers. So, spoil away. Go watch the movie if you haven't already. Then listen to this podcast. But I would suggest you just turn it off right now and come back to it after you've seen the movie. And I'll put it in the description. I'll put it everywhere. Do not listen to this podcast. That's like the worst marketing for a podcast. Don't listen to it. But don't listen to it unless you don't care about spoilers. And then please listen and rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yeah, no, I mean, rate and review it even if you don't listen to it. That's always a fine thing to do with podcasts. We should say that. But for context, like, I'm also not a person who cares about spoilers that much. I just brought it up because, again, this is a special case. This is the first Marvel tentpole movie that's come out without a day-and-date option. So it's absolutely a special case. You can only go see it in theaters, however you decide to do that. And otherwise, it's supposedly coming to Disney Plus in about 45 days. So it's different from previous situations.
Couldn't we just before we start like diving into the story of it, just like say if we like the movie or not, though?
I don't know. Is it a spoiler to say?
It's kind of a spoiler. At least.
Yeah. Do we have to? We can have a spoiler-free discussion, possibly.
Well, I already told people to turn the damn podcast off.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
we
Right. You
already
have to
told them.
recut that part.
Yeah,
So never
that's
mind.
true.
Fine.
How about this? Before we dive into like the real kind of nitty-gritty about the story and whatever, let's just go around the horn and say like how we felt about the film. So let's just start with you, Brittany. I know Shang-Chi is one of your favorite comic book characters. What is your opinion of the film?
I think that this is probably one of the most well-done Marvel movies in a long time. Everyone likes to complain about Marvel's like color grading and visuals, and I think this film had the best visuals. Even like the scenes that were CGI packed, I felt looked better than some of the other Marvel movies when there's no CGI in the scenes. So like that goes to show just how well this team did working on this film. It was amazing. Brad and his team, they were just amazing with the fight core. It was just, this is really, honestly, I think this is like top 5 for sure for me in Marvel.
Top 5
maybe,
Marvel. Wow.
Maybe top 3.
Wow.
I want to say top.
Okay.
I really liked it. I've seen it twice so
Nice.
far. I have to go again with my friend Julie because
Twice.
we were supposed to go, like I said last week on the pod, but some stuff happened with her where she couldn't go this week. So we're going to go next week. So I'm going to be seeing it for at least 3 times.
Out of curiosity, what are other things in the top 3?
So what's 1 and
As
2
your
is
kind
what
of
you're saying?
Soviet system, but, like,
Or,
what's-
yeah.
what's
Well, I
1 and
guess we
2?
don't know the order, right? So it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
We don't know the order
I'm not
yet,
sure.
right?
I don't have a locked order yet because I'm still
Okay.
like, where am I going to put this?
Yeah.
But definitely Thor Ragnarok and Winter Soldier are the top, and there
Sure.
was Shang-Chi. So yes. Yeah. I
Awesome.
really like I think all 3 of those look the best to me too, visually for Marvel. Even though I know some people have some things they don't like about Thor Ragnarok, I think Thor Ragnarok is really beautiful, especially some of those shots where it looks like they're Renaissance paintings. So,
like Thor coming down from the lightning.
Yeah, when they have all
the pile of
those
people.
shots, and then also the shot with Valkyrie where she's coming down, like that is such a cool shot. So I don't know, but those three
Ragnarok is definitely, when it comes to like color in the MCU, that's the pinnacle. Dominic, you have been anticipating Shang-Chi for quite some time. We've done several podcasts about it. We even did a video about it. What is the verdict?
Well, I thought it was an excellent movie. With my film critic hat on, I say, like, it's not quite a great movie because of some stuff, because of stuff in the second half, basically. I wouldn't call it a great movie with my film critic hat on. But, you know, with the Asian American experience to offset, like, how personally exciting it is definitely a great movie. Just so with that, you know, selfish angle, it's like a great movie, maybe the greatest movie. But you know, that's a weighted grading. Certainly in my in my top 5 Marvel movies, there's, you know, which is a cloud of Ragnarok, what Winter Soldier already mentioned, and some combination of Endgame and Black Panther and Captain Marvel are my favorites. But yeah, but Shang-Chi's up there. It's like above, you know, the Ant-Mans and the Doctor Stranges by a lot.
Raymond, are you ready to go over the precipice and take the other side? The yang to their yin?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say I enjoyed the movie. I've seen it twice. I'm probably going to see it a third time this week because it's a lot to process for lots of different reasons. And I am landing on, you know, I'm going to sidestep the discourse, but like, you know, it's not our Black Panther, but it's about an Ant-Man. It's about an Ant-Man for me. Like, I enjoyed the movie. I think it's fun. It was better than my hesitancy and things that I was kind of nervous about. It played better than I expected it to. But there are things about it that maybe I'm judging it harsher because it is also on that scale of, oh, this is supposed to be the one for me, guys, and so I'm thinking about things maybe a little bit more critically than other movies that I may give a pass for in certain aspects of it. But yeah, it's about an Ant-Man for me.
Before we move on, how do you feel about Ant-Man? Because that could be...
Because
the people don't know. Right?
Well, like, if, like, Winter Soldier... I agree with, like, Winter Soldier and Ragnarok as being, like, very distinct and having very clear voices. And Ant-Man is kind of a summer romp that you enjoy, and you don't really think about watching it again.
Raymond has seen it 3 times, though. So.
I've seen it. Yeah, I'm seeing it 3 times.
Sounds like you watched it again.
For the culture, right.
For the culture. But, like, is it a movie that I would want to pop in again? Am I gonna buy it on Blu-ray? Not that I bought a Marvel movie on Blu-ray.
Do you buy any movies on Blu-ray that aren't Criterion?
This is fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me round out the review portion here and say I'm with Raymond. I think the main reason I asked Raymond to join is because I want to just, you know, I felt intimidated by you guys when I told you in chat, I don't think I love this movie. And I just felt attacked. So I just needed some backup. No, I'm seriously though. I didn't. Yeah, I'm like Raymond. I kind of went in with some like hesitancy, and you know, you guys have known. I've been saying in the fight between Snake Eyes and Shang-Chi, I'm Team Snake Eyes, and then I saw Snake Eyes, and that's as much as I'll say about Snake Eyes. But I was pleasantly surprised. Like I did love everything Tony Leung. Like every time he was on screen, this was my favorite movie of all time. Like. So if you just take the Wen-Wu portion out and just present that, if it was like a Marvel short and it was a 20-minute Wen-Wu movie, it's my favorite movie of all time. The Shang-Chi stuff, I don't know that I loved. I think like Sean's arc and Katie's arc felt the flattest to me in the movie. And like when that's the titular character, it's just kind of like, I want to go back to the bad guy. Tell me what the bad guy's doing. I wish the opening sequence where they told the history of the Ten Rings organization, I wanted that to be the movie. Just let's follow Tony Leung's character from a thousand years. Let's just watch that. So I would say that, to be fair to the Shang-Chi portion, I wanted more of the what's life like him in San Francisco like more. Like I felt like they went straight from like they're valets and now he's Shang-Chi. You know, like it was like that bus scene was way earlier in the movie than I expected it to be. And I was like, oh, so we're just moving. And, I guess from a pacing perspective, it was a long-ass movie. Like, that was kind of a good thing to, like, just get to it sooner. But, like, I just didn't feel like his world was established enough before we were, like, upending it, And so, like, that's, I think, the biggest kind of, like, qualm I had. And in like, any Marvel movie, the third act CGI stuff was just a little kind of, like, gray skies and digital puppets fighting each other. Literal digital, like, dragons too. Like, I wasn't expecting. And that's another thing. Like, so that's just my kind of perspective of the movie. The one thing I did leave thinking when I called you, Raymond, was that, like, I guess this was the Asian American Iron Fist movie I'd always asked for, though, right? Because, like,
that's what it ended up becoming.
Yeah.
That's the story they wrote instead of a Shang-Chi story.
Because, like, Shang-Chi was essentially Danny Rand, right? Like, he's like this guy who, I'm not super familiar with Shang-Chi, Brittany. I know you love the comics character, but as far as I know, he's a very street level hero.
Yeah. I loved it a lot. I felt like the adding the, like, more mystical elements that are more Iron Fisting worked really well with what they're going for, especially with when you kind of also take into mind what they're doing with the MCU as a whole going forward. So I feel like them leaning into more, let's make him more mystical, works. But like I said, this is what I did. That's what I kind of mentioned in my post. Like, I want to save my thoughts for the pod, is because I very much felt that this is the, like, care and attention that, like, Danny Rand should have got. And so that was the only kind of downside for me with this movie, is it made me think, like, well, shit, why didn't they do this with, Danny Rand? Like, he's such a great character. And so that kind of made me a little bit sad, but I'm like, it's okay if the actual, like, Asian character got, like, the love and care and attention that, should have been given to Iron Fist. But it's okay,
But I mean, it's almost like they pulled whole cloth from, like, the Iron Fist story, though, right? Because, like, Shang-Chi's just really good at kung fu in the comics.
Yes.
It's like, that's basically, and then he's like a spy, which I'll speak more of later. But then, like, the pieces that I felt like, were never part of Shang-Chi's stories. They're like, he derives his power from the heart of the dragon. And he, like, there's this mystical Chinese mythological place that only, like, enters our dimension every couple years. It was very, Ta Lo is very much Kunlun, though, in this, right? Like, who are these mystical beings and who give their power to the Iron Fist? And it's just like, huh. But that said, like, I guess that's why am I looking at gift horse in the mouth, right? Or a gift guardian lion in the mouth. Like, this is the movie that I was asking for in 2014 when I started AA Iron Fist. And so in that sense, right, both cases with the Asian American Snake Eyes and the Asian American Iron Fist just disguised as Shang-Chi, I got everything I wanted 7 years ago. I should just shut down the Nerds of Color now.
Well, if that's really the subject of this podcast, that was a weird way to get to it, but
we're announcing the end of the Nerds of Color.
It's a big announcement, guys.
If you think we've won and there's nothing else to do, I mean, go ahead.
We've stopped Asian hate. We are good.
I mean, this is why we became friends in the first place, was because I was agreeing with you that they should update Danny Rand to being Asian American, and it would make the most sense, and that's how we ended up on this journey together. Basically.
Yeah.
But let's look at that point, because I mean, I want to talk about the spy aspect too, but, like, at that point in time, we're kind of trying to shoehorn, like, kind of sidle our way into the Marvel narrative in a way that would, center an Asian American actor, basically, through this, conceptual Asian American Iron Fist, which didn't happen. And now it's just a new way of looking at it. It's not like we like sort of sideways backed into the story. It's our story. I think it's very much for us being Asian Americans, also Asians and everybody. But
instead of making Iron Fist Asian American, what they ended up doing was making Shang-Chi Asian American and, like, mystical, right? Like, to give us, like, that's how they backed into, like, the AA Iron Fist of it all, right? Like, because again, Shang-Chi was never a mystical superhero in the comics, and then, he was never really Asian American in the comics.
He's more recently with, okay, this is what I know about the comics, and someone can add, but
the Jin Yang stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, he adds a lot of Mandarin and backstory and magical powers in recent comics, especially by Jin Yang. But also, I would say, like, I think originally he was conceived much in the Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon vein, and there was a lot more secret agent stuff. And I think that's the cool thing that they deviated from here, because it would have been a little too, easy to have him just be this badass guy who works for some government agency like S.H.I.E.L.D. or something. That would have been a little trite in the way it would take away from, the real Asian American guy story. We have plenty of people in Marvel Universe who are just like super well-trained secret agents, there's only so much more story we got there. So I thought that was great that they went away from that side of it, the Enter the Dragon model.
Well, that said, I will just say though that, and Marvel, if you're listening, if they do take Jimmy Woo and give him the Agents of Atlas storyline and let him run a secret organization and do all that stuff, I would totally be down for that. And I'm happy to write it, Marvel.
Yeah,
if you're listening.
I hear
I
you.
think they're going to. Wasn't that?
Is that confirmed that they're gonna do
wasn't
Agents
that-
of Atlas?
Didn't someone tweet that they had their own concept of how to pitch that show and they pitched it to Marvel?
I think when WandaVision came out, someone on
Yeah.
a screenwriter on Twitter said I have this Agents of Atlas pitch.
If it wasn't confirmed before, this kind of opening weekend is the kind of thing that means it will be confirmed.
Marvel's got $71 million to justify it.
Well, the thing is that I feel like for Phase 4 and beyond, instead of Jimmy Woo being the Phil Coulson of this next, it looks like they're using Wong as the kind of bridge between, to pull all these superheroes together, because Wong plays a big role here in this movie of recruiting essentially Shang-Chi and Katie for some reason.
And for listeners, here's where the
Avengers.
actual spoilers start.
Oh, sorry. Well, again, they're not listening. I told them, turn off your podcast.
I'm just trying to mark my own path in the narrative of this podcast to keep track of where I am.
Wong's
mentally.
presence in the movie, at least, isn't a secret, because he's in the trailer, and there was all of this speculation: is that Sorcerer Wong in the trailer? And then he showed up at the premiere. And the thing that they gave away at the premiere that I was a little pissed off about, that I wish I didn't know going into the movie, is Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
Ben Kingsley being at the premiere and doing press for the movie. I'm why is he just I'm just reminding you I'm not the guy from Iron Man. But then he shows up in the movie, so.
I kind of had a feeling, just because a lot of people had been saying rumors that they were going to re-release All Hail the King,
Which they
is a
did,
short
yeah.
that is included on Thor Dark World.
And since no one owns Thor Dark World, no one has seen that short. I own it too. So
I own it, and I've watched that short 5 times. So, when I heard rumors that was going to be popping back up, I'm like, oh, okay, Ben Kingsley's probably going to be in this movie, or the guy who played Justin Hammer. Why can I never remember his actual name?
Sam Rockwell.
Yes, I always call him Justin Hammer. When I'm like, oh, you've seen that movie, Justin Hammer?
Yeah.
Oh, because he's in that short.
That's
right?
a good name for
Yes.
Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
Don't hammer.
But that's when I kind of knew that they were gonna bring him back. And then when we saw him at the premiere, I was like, he's in this.
Which would have been that kind of cameo would have been cooler had I not knew about it going in. But
But it was
it's
more
not
than a
big.
cameo. It was a kind of delightful part of the movie. I really thought the
Yes.
Liverpool accent. It was kind of evocative of the Beatles, and plus it's kind of like all the Asians getting together, like in Agents of Atlas. I thought that was beautiful. It was a beautiful
liked it,
team.
yeah.
It was just missing Jimmy Woo.
Yeah. Well,
I agree.
God, you are really on the it's got to be perfect angle today, man. This is what I thought was going to happen. Oh my God, it's not an A+ movie. Wow.
Yeah, it
All
doesn't
the
represent
flaws.
my specific experience.
All the
so
flaws.
It must be. Yeah, that's true. I complain when people did
B+
that.
good enough for
but
you?
there are a lot of flaws.
Well,
There are many flaws. There are many flaws.
We'll get into
I'm
the
happy to
flaws.
talk
We'll
about
get
the
into the
flaws.
flaws.
But
We'll get into the
Jimmy Woo wasn't in it. That's a bad movie. He wasn't fucking available. Okay.
Oh, come on, Randall Park. He's always available. That guy does everything.
Oh, okay, well, I guess the movie
About
sucks
Melinda
because they
May.
knew it wasn't. That's true. Movies suck because they don't have Randall Park in them. They should. All
Well, I
movies
think
should have
that's-
Randall Park in them. But
Every movie should have Randall
but
Park.
if that.
What about Elodie Young? She could have been in it. They could have worked a hand into it.
Oh man.
Yeah,
let's-
Oh, you mean Elektra?
Okay, I
Yeah, we
have a
get started on
question.
that.
I feel like Dom might know more than I. Okay, I don't know if I made this up in a fever dream or whatever, but I'm pretty sure I felt like I read a Shang-Chi comic where his dad is actually the leader of the hand.
I think they did do that once.
I feel like I read that somewhere,
Oh,
or I just totally headcanoned it once out of something else I read, or
I think they've messed with his dad origin at least 6 times at this
yeah,
point.
and he was the leader of the hand. And
Plus,
stuff,
they mess
and,
with the origins of the hand, they
Yeah.
change it so Daredevil could take it over and Black
or
Panther
the
could take over.
chast or something like that.
Yeah. So there's something there. He does get connected with the hand in at least some storyline.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But yeah, again, that hand and Elektra stuff is still in the Netflix Marvel Universe, struggling to crossover someday.
Yeah. The multiverse hasn't quite broken enough, Raymond, for
It
all
hasn't
our
broken through the
trivia.
Netflix wall, whatever that is.
I don't know.
But it will.
Reboot Iron Fist, though, please.
Well, they did, and they called it Shang-Chi.
They did,
this was their Iron Fist reboot.
They're like, this is all you're getting, Britney.
Basically, the Eternals is the Inhumans reboot.
Yeah.
Well, that's a weird way of thinking of it. I mean, if we're on the line of just rebooting the couple Marvel things that sucked prominently, yes. But I mean, now we're like centering those two things because they happen to have the least talented writer showrunner involved on both of those things, and that's why.
Talk about failing up, right?
Scott
Buck
weren't
is
very
like...
good.
Anyway, let's just dig into it a little bit more. So let's look at the main cast. Simu Liu, what was your opinion of Simu Liu's portrayal of Sean, aka Shang-Chi?
I really liked him. I know there's people who don't like him personally for other reasons, but I don't know. I thought he was fun. It was really sweet and endearing, and I loved that. And he was also very nice to look at.
I think that he was a good straight man. Like, it felt like he was able to keep up with the people that were with him, but I think that the script doesn't give us a clear sense of kind of... To me, at least, Shang-Chi comes off as a bit of a cipher, and, like, I didn't find the guy inside, but, like, when he's doing a comedy scene with Awkwafina, he's funny. When he's doing a dramatic scene with Tony, he's keeping up. So he's there for it.
Yeah, I think with the Awkwafina piece, like I know when she was announced, a lot of people were like, why is Awkwafina in this movie? And then there's all these people who hate Awkwafina. So we already dove into the Awkwafina discourse last week. We are not doing that this week. And I thought she was fine in the movie. And I think to Raymond's point, I think the reason she was cast is that they needed someone to inject the like one-liners and the comedy and give Simu someone to bounce off of to be like funny, because like naturally I don't think he would have been that way without her.
I think it's to give the Asian Americanness of his time in San Francisco, right? Like it's so that if he has no one to interact with, we're not gonna know. Like he's not gonna interact with anybody. There's no sense of what his life.
He'd just
is
be
like.
going to that karaoke room by himself, which does happen, but it's weird.
Right.
Well, but I think Awkwafina's importance to the film is that she's the one who brings the Asian Americanness to the movie, right? Like it's her story as like the American girl, like I did find that one scene when she's at the dinner table with Wenwu, and he's like, American girl, you know what I mean? And I think just even though that was a throwaway line, it was kind of like, that whole notion going back to Iron Fist, like Asian Americans are fish out of water in China, right?
Yeah,
like it doesn't have to be.
Says a lot.
I have an issue with that scene, but I'll save that issue for later when he's talking about the Mandarin. This is just me complaining about the script and then just making notes about what I'm
Sure, we'll come back to that.
I thought Simu Liu had we were talking about people's speaking voices and distinguishing people's voices. I just wanted to comment, I thought Simu Liu had his nice speaking voice. It's a pleasure to hear them dialogue about these things. Yes, we zero in on Awkwafina's speaking voice. That shtick is, I'm not a big fan of it, but I like it. But I like Simu Liu's speaking voice. He's doing that leading man thing.
And what did you think of him as a leading man? Like, because this is his first gig. I mean, Kim's Convenience, he's still like fifth on the call sheet, but here, like, he's carrying the movie.
I think he's got it in the bag. I just hope for him that he can work on his sensitivity level to how people react to him, because I personally think he's great as an actor, and I think he's good looking, and I really think he carried the movie and did the action really well, and like really like Brad Allen and that stunt team and him, they really like put in the work. You can see it. And so I think he has a great chance as long as he doesn't let what other people say get to his head too much or like upset him too much. If he can get a little bit of a tougher skin, I think he'll be fine.
Just be less online, I think would
maybe,
be the
but,
best advice we can give Simu. And God knows Marvel's probably telling him, hey, you know what? Maybe don't quote tweet people or
I think that's what
don't name
naturally
search on
happens.
Twitter.
That's what naturally
talk back to the
happens
CEO.
when a movie opens big. It's gonna happen. They're gonna tell him to cool it down.
Yeah.
The fact that he was extremely online up to this point, I think, says something about how much an unknown quantity the Asian American leading man is. I think they weren't necessarily expecting that the movie would be a big deal, so they just let him. They probably didn't give them the big talking to because they thought maybe it's just as well.
I mean, they kind of figured that this movie was gonna not do well. They were
Right.
preparing to push back the other movies because they thought this movie was gonna fail. And
Right.
it did not.
And how about that? How about that? I think that's great.
It's actually made the most out of any Labor Day open weekend, whatever, for movies. It's made the most money.
Yeah, definitely
history.
broke the Labor Day weekend.
Yes.
But you know how we talked about like arbitrary records in sports, like the Labor Day record is to me not that impressive, just because like the movies that typically get released on Labor Day
Aren't that great.
aren't that great, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
like Memorial Day weekend record breaking, But I'm sorry
But
to
the
sound like
record for
I'm sorry to
during
sound like
a
a Chinese
pandemic.
dad. I
Yeah,
get
but
it.
the
during
record
a
for during a
pandemic-
pandemic with no other option. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if there was no pandemic right now and it's still open this weekend, like, it would have
Right, it would have been 100 million.
It would have been way more, and it would have crushed, like, any expectation. So I think that with the limitations of a pandemic and everything, and people who are just, like, really going to wait the 45 days out, like, it did really, really well. I think it had the second strongest opening of the pandemic behind Black Widow. But Black Widow got both those, simultaneous release. So
And they were using that Disney Plus money in their box office too. So I wonder, like, how much if you were to remove the Disney Plus Premiere Access from her movies.
hers was 60.
Without the Premiere Access.
They said somewhere that it was the pure box office
was 60.
was still
So it would have been
the
lower
biggest
than
opening this
Shang-Chi.
year.
It would have been lower,
I see.
yeah. Hers was 60.
Well,
and
at least
then
they're both Asian American movies.
It was like
so.
30 million because of extra 30 million because of Disney.
Well,
Wow,
so.
okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, to jump on the, again, ScarJo Asian joke that we have to make every time, and that's fine. I mean, let's look at it this year. What movies have survived
Fast
the
and Furious.
pandemic box office problem? Fast and Furious, Black Widow, Shang-Chi. That's it.
That's it.
Funny about that. They're all... Well, let's break out the... Let's let aside the Black Widow part for a second. It's a woman-led movie. Fast and Furious is a multicultural ensemble-led movie. Shang-Chi is the most Asian American movie we've had at this level. Pretty interesting, huh? They're the movies that are keeping Hollywood afloat, basically, by their conventional model.
I don't like to say the name of the movie because of superstition reasons, but the Sweet Man movie.
The Sweet
You know
Man.
what I
Yes,
mean?
there you
Sweet
go.
Man, Sweet
There
Man,
you
Sweet
go.
Man.
also-
If I say that 5 times, what happens?
That also made some, as the first, I think, movie directed by a black woman to have the #1 spot. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. So
There you go.
both Shang-Chi and Sweet Man are doing really well.
And you have a mirror right there. I don't know if you should say it any more times.
No.
Gosh, so scary.
I think, but yeah, there was an op-ed that I wrote in New York Times back in 2016 that's essentially obsolete now, right? Because it was about why won't Hollywood hire Asian actors, and it's because they're not known box office quantities, and they're not known box office quantities because Hollywood won't hire them, and it's this vicious cycle of, never hiring Asian actors to lead a movie, and then therefore Asian movies never become box office hits, and therefore they don't get hired. And what we're seeing, and I think it's not just in front of the camera, right? It's behind the camera. And what we're seeing these last, probably the last 3 years, I've talked about this. I was just on the Hollywood Reporters, Hollywood Remix podcast talking about this.
That was a great episode, by the way. Great episode.
Thank you. Shout out to
I like-
Rebecca Sun.
I like that one.
But I was at a screening in DC. The reason I saw Shang-Chi was at a special screening in DC where I was asked to speak a few words before the movie. And it's, there is a direct line. And I'm not, trying to be full of myself, but I think there is a direct line from like the Iron Fist stuff to the Oscar So White stuff to the whitewashed out and starring John Cho stuff to Crazy Rich Asians. And then from there to here to Shang-Chi and everything in between. And I think, it's that conversation. It's that being loud, as shitty as the internet is, as shitty as Twitter is, those hashtags helped propel the conversation forward. For whatever reason, those arguments finally penetrated. Because the Asian Americans and people of color have been saying this shit for decades, right? And no one ever listened. And for some reason, people started listening the last few years.
I would also want to throw in one other element to it, that the rise of Asian economies and the desire for Hollywood to tap into those markets, regardless of whether or not I think like Shang-Chi isn't even going to show in China or there's some sort of delay to it. But like the reality that Hollywood finally understands that if they want to make money in those markets, that putting Asian faces is going to like raise some money. Like,
but not Asian American.
It's not
right?
the sole. I'm not saying it, I agree, understood, but I'm saying that like that's an element of like how things are getting packaged and how things are getting sold. And especially when we start getting into the details of like what happens in the magical Talo and what the design of magical Talo is, it's catering to hoping that certain segment, you know, will embrace it.
Maybe, but I think the thing I'll push back on that is that for years Hollywood's response to like the China market is, well, let's put Fan Bingbing in this movie for 5 seconds, and then the Chinese people will love it. And you know, and that's kind of like how it is. And then that does nothing for like, you know, Constance Wu or Gemma Chan, or you know what I'm saying? Like they're not gonna, their faces don't mean anything. That's why like there's a reason that they put Simu Liu in Shang-Chi, and China's like, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? He's ugly. And then they're not even showing it in China. Or like Crazy Rich Asians, like there were all these Hollywood trades back in 2018 was like, Crazy Rich Asians tanked in China. Why is that? It's because China don't give a shit about like seeing Asian Americans in stories, right? And I think that's China wanted Matt Damon in a movie, because the Dirty Little Secret of the Great Wall is like, that was a Chinese production, and they had no problem with Matt Damon in it because they're like, oh shit, Matt Damon's in our movie. But it's like for Asian Americans, all that's like catering to the China market means nothing.
Oh, I agree that like,
I'm just gonna say I have some popcorn from last night. I'm just gonna eat it as I watch Brother versus Brother. This is gonna be very great.
You're supposed to be on my side, Raymond. No, I'm just kidding. You're never on my side.
No, it's an alliance again, but
Of convenience.
Yeah, it's
and genetics.
Yeah, I'm playing Three Kingdoms strategy here. No,
Okay.
I'm saying that they haven't figured the formula out yet, but if they can figure out the formula, that's why they can. This is another way that it's an experiment. Absolutely.
What? An experiment?
China has not responded.
Simu Liu, please do not tweet at Raymond Chow.
Oh, come at me, Simu. Let's go. I'm not on Twitter, so he won't do anything.
Well, how can you fight if you aren't on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm just saying that like, if they can figure out the formula of how can we package Asian Americans to sell to Asians, 100% Hollywood would jump on that. I don't think that it's there yet, but to the degree that is some element of what they're thinking about when they're making this movie and when they're packaging this movie, I think it's there.
But
Not-
again, wait, I
not the
gotta
sole
jump
reason,
in and say
but-
they're failures at figuring out the formula by not knowing shit about Asian Americans are the main thing up to this point. I mean,
Sure.
so I mean, they've been chasing a formula as if they're anywhere close to getting it, but they are so off based on their not knowing anything about what Asian Americans are that it drives me to distraction. It's basically pigeonholing. It's basically getting with Keith's point, I support. But I mean, but again, you can look at it. But I mean, I think you can look at the package of this movie, like the Tony Leung aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree that like Kevin Feige's kind of like ulterior motive is to like tap into more. Although like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is pretty like a moneymaker worldwide. It does like they don't have to like break into the China. In fact, I think that's the tragic irony of Shang-Chi is that like it's the one MCU movie that's not going to play in China. You know, everything else, every other movie, all 24 other ones did gangbusters there, and this is the only one that's not going to even play there.
It will eventually.
I don't know. I mean, those censors are pretty hardcore, and you know they're cracking it out on pop culture pretty strictly in China too. So. But I think the Tony Leung aspect of it is definitely like, to me, that was the big selling point, as you love to recall, Dominic, when we were sitting in the pool bar at San Diego when we were getting all of the drips and drabs out of Hall H, and someone said, Tony Leung's in Shang-Chi and he's playing the Mandarin, and I did like victory laps around the pool.
Yeah, you're very, very excited. It was really a sight to see. And now we're wearing these shirts a couple of years later. How about that? What a journey.
And Tony Leung can still get it.
Yeah, we're both, and I really, enjoy being on this podcast where we can both, we're both kind of gay for Tony Leung, and that's like something we're like...
That's been true since 1994 for me, at
with.
least. I don't know. That's
I think that's something we can all, unify around. And so, I mean, in the most basic way, putting one of your major Chinese movie stars in the movie is one way to try to crack the formula. But also, and Mulan tried that also. But I mean, again, I celebrate the thing because it was a meeting of Asian American and Asian movie actors in one movie, and I think that fusion is what makes it special.
Well, let's talk about Tony Leung for a second, because I said like that's the had he not be in the movie, I don't know how I'd feel about this movie. But his presence alone is what is the reason I will see this again, and is the reason I will buy the Blu-ray. Is that I will just rewatch the Wenwu. What was Fa Le Chen's character's name? Did the women have names? I know Xiaoling had a name.
His sister is Xiaoling,
Wasn't it
and what's
Ying Li, I think.
Because I feel like Michelle Yeoh didn't have a name either. She was just like Auntie.
There's none.
Auntie Nan. Okay. But the scenes between Fa Le Chen and Tony Leung were my favorites in the movie.
Oh, those were beautiful. Oh my god. Especially when they first meet and they have their fight scene. Oh my god, that was so beautiful.
Well, because no one else in cinema can like portray falling in love with another person and longing the way Tony Leung does, right? Like anyone seen In the Mood for Love, Chungking Express, like every movie he's in, Happy Together. I think there's a YouTube video that's just called How Tony Leung Acts with His Eyes or something like that, and it's just
it's Accented
Cinema. Shout out to Accented Cinema. It's like that's, if you know, Dustin Daniel Cretton, shout out to you. You knew exactly what you were getting by casting Tony Leung. So let's show a scene where he's fight/dancing with Fa Le Chen and just show them falling in love with each other. And that was beautiful. I could have watched that for 1,000 years.
Yeah, that, I feel like when that scene was going on, I was like, this is about to be the best Marvel movie ever. I was like, this is it. It's a wrap already. This is better than most of like everything in the MCU. Just that scene alone, I was like, it's probably better than most of what MCU's done. Like, it was just really beautiful.
And the MCU's never been great at like portraying like romance.
Love stories?
Yeah.
They're
like
not
in
great.
any film, right? Like the Jane Foster Thor stuff is not believable. The Sharon Carter. I mean, maybe the other most romantic thing is Peggy and Steve at the end of Endgame, you know, like that dance is just filled with heartache and
I don't know. I just feel like Peggy and Steve has always worked. But I feel like I feel like this is a movie that really nails romance so well, and I was just, it's so beautiful. I don't know.
And the irony too is that like the romance is between the villain and his wife, and not like Shang-Chi and what would essentially be his love interest. Like Katie, you know, is the Jane Foster, is the Sharon Carter to Shang-Chi, and they're like strictly platonic for the
but
duration.
It's still like, I still like seeing that too, just having an actual like genuine friendship. That's also I think another thing some of the other movies lack, which is why I feel like this movie's probably one of the best ones, is that they actually have a genuine friendship and it feels like it and you can see it. And then when you do have the love story between Wenwu and I don't remember the mom's name.
Zhang Li, maybe? Is that what it is?
It was, I know it was like, I want to say like it was
it's Ying Li. I looked it up.
You're saying it in Cantonese.
Ying Lai. Ying Lai is more Cantonese.
Oh, we're about to confuse our candies and mandarins. Okay.
But
whatever, Shang-Chi's mom.
Like
Shang-Chi's
their romance
mama.
was beautiful. Yeah, Shang-Chi's mama and Wenwu's romance was just so beautiful. And then the friendship between Katie and Shang-Chi was just, I loved it. All the friendships were really good, and the relationships and the sister-brother dynamic. And I really loved the father-son storyline. Like, I don't know. I feel like everything about this movie just hit the head on the nail perfectly, and it was really great.
Yeah, I want to tag on to something about that. Like, one thing about Shang-Chi for me was it got back to something that really worked in the earlier parts of the Marvel Universe formula, which was getting a director who is actor-oriented and not necessarily big action sequence-oriented. Because, I mean, if you look at, what Dustin Cretton is known for, he's known for mainly Just Mercy and these other films with Brie Larson. Yeah, which are more character, courtroom drama, small-scale human stuff, right? As opposed to Zack Snyder's, like, million bullets exploding in your face. And so that was an essential part of how the Marvel Cinematic Universe got kicked off with directors like Jon Favreau and Kenneth Branagh. Not the guys who are great at car chases, but the directors who are facile with talking with actors and getting human
Imbuing
stuff to happen.
humanity, right. Into
Yeah,
the
I mean, they
character.
could have gotten some big, action-oriented director, but they got a guy who did courtroom dramas. I think that's really significant.
Oh, and shout out to Brie Larson, because I had been speculating ever since Daniel Cretton was announced, knowing his long storied career with Brie Larson and Brie Larson only, like, how are they going to figure Captain Marvel into the movie? And lo and
Well,
behold,
there she was. Yeah.
mid-credit scene, best mid-credit scene, I think, in
Yes.
any of the Marvel movies.
Best mid-credit scene ever, definitely.
Yeah,
they
so
lost
good.
me in parts of the second act, but that credit scene is like
I will admit, like, I was
ripped my heart
100%
out
on
because
board.
karaoke and also Brie Larson.
Right, because of the tag of the punchline, right? Like, as cool as it was, and there's a lot to speculate in that mid-credit scene that we can get to in a little bit. But not only did you get like a Mark Ruffalo and Brie Larson cameo, but the tag where it was perfectly set up from like the movie, right? Like Chekhov's Eagles song, right? Like she mentions Hotel California, and we see them sing their love for the joke of like, but what if we did this thing, and then they go to the karaoke bar, pays off in the mid-credit scene. So yeah, I don't know about the post-credit scene. That's a little we can get to that too, but the mid-credit scene I really love.
Wonderful.
Before we move on too much, I wanted to circle back to Raymond, because we had been talking about Wenwu and talking about Tony Leung, and you had an issue at the dinner scene when he's recounting Iron Man 3 basically.
Yeah, the recounting, like, the way that the scene plays out is great. And like, that's probably Tony's longest, like, monologue in English in the film. But I found it to be a little off that he, like, the way that the character would kind of be offended at being called the Mandarin. In the film, he's, offended that he's, I'm named after a chicken dish, or the Americans were successfully scared of an orange. And I feel like for who this character is, a guy that's like existed for 1,000 years, and like, yes, he speaks English, and it seems like that's a little bit too much of an idiom. That's a little too much of an American idiom thing of like mandarins are oranges, are also oranges, or also is a Chinese American chicken dish. And like, to me, it seems like, well, wouldn't that character just be kind of offended that like a Mandarin is a minor official, and you're calling me a minor official
that would be
rather
better.
than I'm a lord. Like, that just seems to tie in more with who that character is. And it's just that's kind of where I see, like, to me, that's where the writers are trying to make it an Asian American thing, and like, it strays just a little bit from who I think that character would actually be. And I don't know if that's me being overly, like, it's just something that sticks out to me when.
No,
when
I
he's
agree with
saying
you.
it.
I mean, I think it's a relatively minor detail, but it's definitely one of the details that doesn't quite work. It is because it makes the case that, like, mandarins are only oranges, or that's some silly thing, which has nothing to do with why the Mandarin's called the Mandarin. Really, in the comics, it's because of the minor official usage.
Right. So
that
it's
you
just it's
said
like
already.
it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh, we're making the joke is a joke that's about a play on the English language, but like, this guy wouldn't be thinking of it that way. Is where my head was at when that scene happened.
And I wonder, like,
awkward.
when Tony Leung delivered the line, if he was like, Can he went up to Destin or Dave
Well,
Callahan?
he delivered it so damn well, so I
that's
think
the
he knew.
that's the thing about
Is
Tony
this
Leung. He'll
the
just
first
say,
movie he's spoken this much English?
yeah, his first movie he's spoken any English.
Wow.
In fact,
That's very impressive.
until this movie, I didn't know what his English sounded like. Like his Cantonese is very familiar, of course, and he speaks Mandarin in a couple movies, but English, I don't think he's ever spoken in English in any.
Wow.
I mean, aside from like the Hong Kong English he throws into his pretty natural Cantonese voice, but but he's never spoken like full on English dialogue. So that was quite impressive, because he's unlike Michelle Yeoh or Chow Yun-fat or even Jet Li. Like, this is his first American Hollywood movie. He's been acting for 40 years now, and this is the first time he's ever crossed. Like, he's the one Hong Kong star of that generation. Like I said, the Chow Yun-fats, the Michelle Yeohs, the Jackie Chan's, who's never done an American movie until this.
Okay, wait.
This one.
Also, spoilers related to Asian movie stars. Has there been a movie before where Michelle Yeoh and Tony Leung actually fought over something? Because that was my nitpicky problem. Was they had that one moment they really look like they're gonna fight, and then it was like, Rob.
They've only been in one other movie together. Butterfly and Sword.
Oh, okay.
And it was like a 1994 costume martial arts epic. But I don't remember if... I think they do fight a little bit in it, but not much.
I mean, even still, on Asian movie star level, man, that's like Stallone versus Schwarzenegger. That's like that's a really big deal. I wanted Michelle Yeoh and Tony Leung to have a huge scene together.
Even if they don't fight, they should have at least
had a huge scene.
Had a dialogue together, yeah.
But whatever.
I have a comment question related to that. So the masked teacher character who gets very unceremoniously destroyed in the film, is he somebody in the comics?
Death
is
Dealer.
that a thing in the comics? And
yes, Death Dealer is in old Shang-Chi comics. I don't know if he's in them anymore, but the Death Dealer was he trained Shang-Chi. I think they came up together and they were friends, but then he became evil, and apparently he died very quickly even in the comics. So it was part of his character to show up, be menacing, and then be taken care of.
Well, because it's just he can keep, he's this is the character we're throwing off to Michelle Yeoh, and then oh, bye.
Well, and Michelle Yeoh doesn't even dispense of him. He gets soul sucked by a demon.
Yeah.
Well, we're going over long on Shang-Chi, but I guess that's important because it's Shang-Chi, and Shang-Chi is a milestone movie. But since we're talking about Hong Kong cinema and martial arts films, one of the reasons I did want you on, Raymond, is that you know way more. I mean, you knew the one movie Michelle Yeoh and Tony Leung acted in together.
Thank goodness.
On a martial arts level, because everyone's saying best fight choreography in a Marvel movie, which, to be fair, isn't saying a lot because Marvel movies don't have the greatest choreography, especially Marvel TV shows that deal with martial arts. But everyone is saying that this is the best martial arts fights, or just the best fight choreography they've ever seen in a Marvel movie. How does it rank to you in your infinite wisdom of martial arts?
So, what I will say is that the technical aspects of the fight scenes are very, very good, right? There's especially a long kind of... I don't think it's really a dolly shot, but there's kind of a long dolly shot on the bus where he's fighting across the bus. And they pull back, and you can see, I'm sure that there's a lot of CG magic to make that work, but the fighting that you're seeing happening in there, it's very good. And it still is not quite Hong Kong style editing, so there is still kind of more cutting away and hiding the hits a little bit. But on a technical level, you can definitely see the Jackie Chan influences and the different styles that they want to go for in the fights. I think my one issue is that, other than the Tai Chi dancing fight, which we get 3 times, the other fights don't really have a narrative to them. And, to me, at least, when I'm thinking of, a martial arts movie, especially, a fantasy martial arts movie, there is usually some sort of narrative conceit that makes those things work better. So the breeze and the bus fight is probably the best fight in the movie, is because it's under the premise of, oh, we're on a moving bus, oh, the bus doesn't have brakes, and so how does that influences how he has to fight, that influences all of the consequences,
saving all the people in the meantime,
saving the people, yeah. So it's putting that handicap on him to give you something to kind of work into the story, right, of how does he pull it off. So it's not just that he's the best fighter, but he's also the smartest fighter. And then kind of the rest of the fights don't really have that. And especially once we get into the Naruto looking fights
in Talo.
Yeah, the fights where where they can just have flying rings that they can control from any angle is kind of those fights are cool, but they to me there could have been a little bit more explanation of kind of what the rules were, if that makes sense. Why does Talo Tai Chi turn off the rings, or why does Talo Tai Chi take over the rings?
Protector.
But why, how do the rings? But then I need to know where the magic of the rings are versus the magic.
That's what they're gonna explore. That's why that post-credit scene is there. You're not gonna know. They're
Yeah.
changing it up for the I think they're changing it up for the movie where the rings are gonna come from and stuff. Because
Well,
it's at a call.
Right.
Yeah,
To who?
we
don't
can
know.
talk about that. We can talk about that. But before I did want to say I think it's pretty consensus best fight, right?
Yeah.
If there's one thing I am disappointed in is that they showed most of the bus fight in the trailers. and because it's the best fight in the whole movie, I wish I didn't know that I'd already seen like 90% of it, right? Because I think the bamboo fight was okay. I think it's too dark and it's hard to see. Like, and Raymond made a point.
Are you talking about the scene with
on the
Fala
scaffolding.
Chin?
No, on the scaffolding.
The scaffolding.
okay.
Building.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, excuse
Yeah, no.
me.
No, I'm just talking about like Shang-Chi's fights, right? Because
Oh,
he's supposed to be
I thought
the
we were talking
most.
about fights in general.
Yeah, no. The Shang-Chi fights, especially like the bus fight is best fight. You know, he's not really fighting his sister in the cage, so that's not. I don't think that really counts. You don't see him like, and I think the bamboo scaffolding fight's hard to see because that's where most of like the cutting away happens, right? Because it's not like a Jackie Chan movie where you just pull back and you see them doing crazy shit on the side of a building.
Right, they weren't actually throwing people off 30 floors.
Yeah, like you
off
get
of
spoiled
buildings.
by like Jackie Chan movies, like, oh shit, he's really up there. And yeah, the CG fights at the end were just a little, too anime for me. But I think part of what I was saying in the beginning of the podcast is that like Shang-Chi, to me, I want to see more hand to hand, more of the bus fight type of feel where he's just like taking out dudes. And then Raymond, you said something to me on the phone when I called you after the movie that like Shang-Chi, for being the best martial artist in the Marvel Universe, gets his ass kicked a lot in this movie.
Yeah, he loses like all the time in this movie.
Because I gotta make him humble.
That's how you grow. That's how you
They
grow.
have-
Does he become humble by the end of this movie?
has
Does
to
he
be-
find
he
his
has to
humility
be
in this movie?
I think
Is that his arc? Is his arc humility?
you're starting to confuse Shang-Chi with Simu Liu, but that's another story.
You said that one, not me.
Yeah, that's getting
You
cut.
have a Twitter, bro.
I
That's
don't
getting
know.
cut. Simu,
I
please
thought
do
the
not
fight with the
tweet at me.
rings were really cool. Maybe because it's the closest to like an Iron Fist decent fight scene I will ever get. That I was like, this is really cool.
I mean, he's even glows orange, right?
I
Like,
know, and I was just like, ugh. The whole time, both times watching it,
yeah,
I
it
just
does
really
glow.
just felt like, yeah.
I
They
mean,
did Danny Rand dirty.
the talking point about best fight choreography ever is a little bit like the sports graceful type thing. That's like whatever we're arguing about this. And I mean, in my opinion, yeah, the fights were not as great as they were in like Into the Badlands, but that's
They
a
had
high
the same
bar.
team though.
They were very good because Into the Badlands is the greatest.
Oh, Into
I mean,
the
as
Badlands is the
as far
greatest.
as
I hope
the,
that whole team
American
takes
TV context.
over.
Yeah. And rest his soul, that guy Brad Allen passed away. Good work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think I also agree the fights got a little less exciting in the second half for various reasons.
Well, Dominic, I know you're loath to kind of like criticize the movie, but you did say the second half was not as strong as the first half. What was it about the second half that you felt?
Yeah, I mean, for all kinds of reasons. Like the first half, as an Asian American, you're really into it. You see recognizable experiences, and the bus fight is cool, and it's going somewhere. I mean, once it goes into a mystical land with cute creatures, and there is a little bit of an overload of Fantasia. It's just not quite tightly structured because they're talking a lot of exposition too. Yeah.
That was Michelle Yeoh's character's name, Exposition Lady.
Yeah, that was basically her. That was her power. And a little bit like my problem with the TV shows, there's a little bit too much like, oh, we're building a fancy world, and less like, we're interested in the characters of people. And just the way that whole final sequence was staged was, I'm not going to say it was bad, but it could have been done better because they just kind of like rode up on the village, and then there's one monster and another monster. We sort of lose sight of the human conflict. Mm-hmm. And Aquafina learns to shoot arrows in 2 minutes. It could have been done better.
I definitely feel like they were in the early stages of writing the script for this movie, and then Black Panther came out, and then like the war rhinos are in Black Panther. Like, okay, now we're putting magical lions in our fight.
We need CGI creatures somewhere.
We need a giant CG lion.
And they're good magical lions. I really liked all the creatures, but it was not tightly edited in a way that keeps it on the people that we're trying to follow.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they did lean a little too hard in the mythological space. I think to Raymond's point, at least they were authentic in the creatures that they did, and they didn't just make up like Pokemon or some shit. Like they actually had nine-tailed foxes and guardian lions and things like that. And the dragon looked recognizably like an Asian dragon, and then it wasn't like a fire-breathing dragon, because I feel like if this was Scott Buck, it would be like a fire-breathing dragon. It's like that's not a Chinese dragon.
Isn't Shao Lo though a fire-breathing dragon?
Well, but that's why that's like a white guy writing a dragon in the comic.
I was thinking it'd have been cool if they had gotten Benedict Cumberbatch to do the voice of the dragon. Like he's just doing
these all dragons.
Screaming.
Schmaug. Well, he gets the
that
Smaug
would have been a
treatment at the
twist.
end. Let's break down that mid-credit scene because I think that's the most important one. Just the post-credit scene is turns out Xiaoling actually is a bad guy and she's taking over the 10 rings.
Yes. I
Is
saw
that
coming,
she's
though.
a bad guy? Is it that she's a bad guy though? I don't think that that's necessarily.
I don't know.
clear.
That's definitely the vibe they gave off.
That-
Is that
yeah,
she's
that's the vibe I
she's
got
the new
too.
Mandarin.
Yes.
Well, right.
just
no,
doesn't have
she's
the
new
rings.
Mandarin. Well, see, we didn't get into her character. We didn't talk about her character. So I thought that her character was great, but then they didn't give her anything to do. And like,
Which
it's
is
very
like
clear,
pretty apt that that's what her character
which
was.
is what happens to her character in the story. And so like, there is no scene where she talks to her dad and like have her dad dismiss her.
Well, there is a scene where he's like, "My son is home. Take the girls away." Like
Right,
that's a little
right.
Yeah.
But like even during, it just seems like you could have fit that in that conversation of like, even if that is she trying to please her dad and she can never do it, and like it's implied that like that's the emotional relationship, but we never actually see it. She says it, but we don't see it.
But when she's talking about her fight club, she says, "My father wouldn't give me his empire, so I made my own." And then now that her father's empire is available, she's like, "Well, you know what? I'll take my father's empire too, and I'll make it all girls." Right? I think that's the like.
Yeah.
I joked with Raymond, like I was kind of half hoping that all those women training at the end were like the ex Black Widows, because like they had nothing to do, like they become the new 10 Rings. But
Well, it'll be is the Black Widows versus
the 10 rings. But the mid-credit scene, I think, is the most important for the next phase of the MCU. So there's this running gag of Sean and Katie kind of like telling stories to their, college friends who are responsible, and they're the irresponsible ones. And then they, of course, very Michael Pena style, recount the events that just happened. I mean, Raymond, you even criticized like they cut a little too quickly from like the fight to like the bar scene, but we won't get into that. And then Wong shows up, takes them to Camertage, I guess, because it's not Sanctum Sanctorum,
No.
and says, those rings, do you have them? And they're trying to figure out where these rings come from. The sorcerers have no idea. Captain Marvel's never seen it before. Bruce Banner, who's Bruce Banner and not Professor Hulk, which I thought was really interesting.
And he has a broken arm.
Interesting.
Well, that's from the Endgame. Like his arm was in a sling at the end of it after
forgot.
snapping.
Interesting.
I forgot.
But even at Tony's funeral, he was still Hulk. And when Captain America gave the shield to Falcon, he was still in his Hulk guise. The whole point in Endgame is that Banner figured out how to permanently be both Bruce Banner and Hulk. And for some reason, he's just Bruce Banner at the end again. So I think that's interesting, and we may get more in She-Hulk about why that is. Speaking of She-Hulk, Emil Blonsky's cameo I thought was really weird. That Abomination is working with Wong for some reason, and not
I
just
didn't
like
track that at all. What happened there?
they're just throwing fights at Xiaoling's fight
That's
club.
like their side gig to be like the pro wrestlers.
But
You
why?
have to pay rent. You have to pay rent for the West Village. So
yeah, no, that's
it's those
that's
property
huge,
taxes, man. Bleecker Street, kill you.
And then they just end there like, we don't know where these rings come from, but they are sending off a signal to someone. What did you think the rings were? I have my theories, but I was just curious what you guys thought those rings were referring to.
I don't know. Maybe it's like connecting to the multiverse. I don't know. But a part of me is hoping somehow they're gonna reboot Danny Rand to bring him back, and it's like it's calling Kunlun, and not Finn Jones.
Not
we
Finn
don't
Jones.
want Finn Jones.
Oh, with
Bring
another
someone
actor,
else.
perhaps.
But yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. But I know that's not gonna happen because they're not gonna bring Iron Fist back after how well this movie did. Iron Fist is dead.
Iron Fist is dead. Poor Jessica Henwick.
I didn't give it a lot of thought because I think it's at that early stage of Phase 4 when they'll just tease things and figure out what it means later.
I suspect that it's somehow related to the Eternals.
Me too.
Like that seems the most obvious.
That'd be
thing,
good.
Which is why I'm probably wrong, but that seems like where they're going with it is that even the Avengers have no idea that the Eternals were around,
Right.
and so that's why it doesn't recognize any of it. And
I think it leads into the Eternals.
yeah, and so then probably Wenwu found an Eternal ship,
Like 1,000.
and that's where he gets the
Oh,
rings.
that'd be good.
And then also the Soul Sucker, I think, is a deviant.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
It doesn't look any... Because unlike the Great Protector and the Lions and even Morris, those Soul Suckers didn't resemble anything in Chinese mythology.
No.
They just look like giant
like
bats
Cthulhu.
and demons, right? Because even Chinese demons don't look like what they look. Those look like slimy monsters that you see in any, like, J.J. Abrams Cloverfield
Yeah,
movie.
they look kind of like the monsters in the Eternals trailer.
But they do look like deviants. So I'm thinking that they're deviants, and that's why the ring kind of like works kind of with that, the deviants in a certain type of way. So that's what my speculation. I think it's tied to the Eternals. And that would fit the pattern since Eternals comes next, and usually the mid-credit scene is leading to the next movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, any final thoughts on Shang-Chi before we move on and wrap up? Because again, this this might be one of the longest episodes of Hard NOC Life.
I loved it. That's all I gotta say. I loved it. I want more, and I'm excited to see where this next phase of the MCU goes.
You ready for Shang-Chi 2 already, right?
Yes.
Shang-Chi 2, Iron Fist. Is what you want.
Like, I think
The
I
verses
would.
in there would be a good movie.
I would cry if that happens, and they actually do
Shang-Chi
Danny
versus
Rand
Iron
right.
Fist.
I'm still okay with them making a Danny Rand Asian American. By the way, like I'm still on board for that. So Lewis Tan is still available, hopefully.
Dominic,
It's a big deal. I was very moved. I think it's great.
how many times did you cry?
I mean, not cry. What do I? Cry? I have a problem with the tear ducts. That's not something I do that much. But like as I said, my arc was kind of like, oh god, this is the best shit ever. Second act, my movie critic head is on really hard, and then the mid-credit scene when they go off to karaoke is just like the most beautiful Asian American superhero thing ever. Because it's that karaoke is a thing I do. Cosplay karaoke is a thing a subculture I was invested in before this fucking pandemic happened. So
Yeah.
that was all the feelings at once. And so distinctly Asian American, that whole vibe right there.
Raymond.
I ultimately came away liking the movie more than I frankly thought I would, and kind of sighing a relief that I liked it more than I thought I would, because I was prepared to be disappointed in this film, and I wasn't.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm of all the slate of Asian American martial arts big blockbusters that were coming out over the summer, Mortal Kombat, Snake Eyes, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was not the most anticipated for me, even though I knew of those three in particular, like big budget, big studio, you have Warner Brothers, Paramount, Disney. And that in itself is an awesome trend, right? Like 3 major blockbuster action films by the 3 biggest studios all had Asian American leads. This is definitely the most competently made of those 3. As much as I always cape for Snake Eyes, compared to Shang-Chi, Shang-Chi was clearly the biggest budget, clearly the best kind of like team behind it. So yeah, going in, it was like my 3rd most anticipated of those 3, and it's the best executed of the 3. So yeah, I mean, Shang-Chi, it's a big deal. Anytime, Dominic, you said it before, Marvel is alpha, and anytime Marvel essentially validates a character, it almost feels like they're validating a community. And I think that's where for a lot of Chinese Americans and Asian Americans writ large, I think that's what Shang-Chi kind of does in a, shitty corporate type of way, but that's what, late stage capitalism is for. Real quick, we were talking about Wong. I don't have a lot of time, and I know not everyone watched it, but just quick thoughts on What If this week, because I thought it was a strong episode and deserves its own podcast to break down. But the Doctor Strange episode of What If, Brittany, did you have some quick thoughts you wanted to share?
A lot of thoughts, but let me try to make it so short. So, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie with Guy Pearce called The Time Machine.
The H.G. Wells.
Yes. That's one of my favorite Guy Pearce movies. So, watching this, and I was like, all right. And as soon as it started, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be like The Time Machine. I'm here for it. Oh my god, it was so cool. It was so dark. And then it made me sad that they didn't let Scott Derrickson do all, like, the good, creepy horror stuff that he's great at with the first Doctor Strange movie. Because, like, this felt like something that this episode felt like something that Scott Derrickson would do. And it was just so good, and it felt like it's the most, like, concise storytelling I've seen from Marvel. Like, and even I was even saying that Shang-Chi is probably some of the best concise and, like, on-point storytelling from Marvel, but, like, this What If episode is just, like, it's top-tier Marvel. It's probably, like, the best Marvel has done, like, ever out of everything. Like, I think that episode was really strong and really crazily good. Like, it felt like one of the, like, a better Twilight Zone episode, right? Like, yes.
This kind of, and I love that it ended, spoilers for What If, but it ended with, like, that version of Strange kind of, like, just lost in his own little mirror dimension, staring at Christine's corpse for an eternity. Because when it ended, it was like, holy shit, that's the end?
Yes.
Like, it cut to credits, like, oh my god, they actually went there.
Which I think that, like, the strength and weakness of the What If premise is that, like, you can do whatever crazy shit you want to do, and, like, this is why that worked, right? Is that, like, yeah, nah, he's just fucked. Goodbye. And, like, that's what that premise lets you do, is just, you can do that kind of story.
Yeah. And I did like how it set up what you've been predicting, Brittany, for the whole season. that the Watcher is going to intervene, because he was like, I could intervene right now, but I won't. And he actually argues with Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
You know, he actually presents himself. So I did think that was like setting up, as you said, you know, probably in the finale or the penultimate episode where the Watcher, I think, and it might be a scene in the trailer where you see the heroes kind of reforming their own Avengers circular camera shot, but it's Captain Carter and T'Challa, Star-Lord, and even like evil Doctor Strange. Like somehow the Watcher pulls them all into like a multiversal team
Exiles?
or something.
Yeah. Some people think that's the Doctor Strange in No Way Home.
The evil Doctor Strange? Maybe.
That's a cute theory.
Maybe.
I like
I did say in our reaction video that he seems like an evil Doctor Strange, so.
I would love for the last episode of What If to be live action, and it's the Watcher comes in and he finds the Fantastic Four and like warns them about Galactus, because that's what he's supposed to do.
Maybe. All right, that's Hard NOC Life. Let's do a quick What's Nerd Poppin'. Brittany Monet, what is Nerd Poppin'?
So I went to Hella Mega Tour on Friday night, which was basically, if you don't follow rock music, it was a big tour with Weezer, Fall Out Boy, and Green Day as the 3 headliners, and the interpreters opened for them. It was at the Dodger Stadium. It was the first time I've been to a Fall Out Boy show that was in such a big like arena where it was actually sold out. And even though they went on second out of the big 3, they had the best audio. Like, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a huge Fall Out Boy fan. Like, well, I don't know, whoever did the audio for Weezer hates Weezer because they didn't. Oh, I couldn't hear. I could barely hear like.
That sounds like a Weezer fan.
Like I could barely hear them like singing. Like, it was bad. Like, and then Green Day, they were loud, but you really still couldn't hear Billy singing all that well. But Patrick singing for Fall Out Boy, you could hear him perfectly. You could hear what he was singing. You knew what song. Like, I don't know. I would just say
maybe Rivers and Billy are just too old and they didn't want people to hear them singing.
Maybe. I don't know.
Their voice don't work anymore.
But yeah, like, their audio was not the best, but it was a really fun show. It was just a lot of fun to, like, you know, I saw Shang-Chi, like, at kind of late, got home at, like, 2 a.m., went to sleep, got ready for the concert, saw the concert, and then
saw Shang-Chi again.
Went to sleep. Yep, that was my day. It was like Shang-Chi, Fall Out Boy, and Green Day,
Shang-Chi.
Weezer, and then Shang-Chi again. That was my day. It was a lot of fun. So, yeah, if you missed Hella Mega Tour, I'm so sorry.
Weezer is the first concert I ever went to.
Mine was in sync.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Raymond, you're a big Weezer fan. Will you go to the Megadeth? Was it not Megadeth? What is it called?
That was the last show.
Yeah, I had seen stuff about it, but I wasn't going to go. Not in this.
Well, see, I got my tickets in 2019, and I was supposed to go in the summer 2020, but it got pushed back, and so I went.
Well, at least they still had it though. That's cool.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. So next month is Jonas Brothers.
Dominic, what's Nerd Poppin'?
Well, another live event thing. I mean, I rediscovered the pleasure of going to see a movie theater, and the option of renting.
Oh, that's right. You saw Shang-Chi in a private movie screen.
Yeah, which was great. And I remember you did something similar for Snake Eyes. And it's a special thing. Obviously, you have to have the means and organization. I mean, in this case, you need like 20 people minimum to sort of reserve the theater. But then you do get to control the environment of the theater. And, ask that people are vaccinated and masked and spaced out and everything else. And if you can get 20 friends together, or you just have the means to, put down for 20 tickets, you get to have a private theater screening. And, I think that's great. I think that's a great option for, people who want to have movie outings. It was beautiful.
What was the experience after 19 months of not seeing a movie?
Oh, I mean, it was great. I mean, I talk all the time about, I am the theatrical model, I'm not married to it freaking Patty Jenkins is apparently. It's not it restored some part of my soul, but it was really nice mainly because it was people I knew and not people I didn't know who may or may not be vaccinated and have weird ideas. And there was that trailer for some Halle Berry movie that I didn't even know about, that her versus the moon falling into the earth or something, shit like that.
Moonfall.
It was first I saw of it. All the other trailers I knew. There's one, I guess it's called Moonfall, where the moon is going to crash on Earth, and I believe Halle Berry's in it.
Yeah, can't wait for Neil deGrasse Tyson to tweet about Moonfall. Raymond, what is Nerd Poppin'?
I thought of the nerdiest thing that happened this week, and for me, and it's Hearthstone did a major update for the Battlegrounds game that it does, and it completely revamped, like, it got rid of tons of cards and added a bunch of new cards, and it's a free-to-play game that, like, I occasionally follow, and now I'm playing it again a little bit because of how nice the balance updates have been to this game.
Nerd.
You want a nerd, I want a nerd.
For me, I'll go nerdy too. So I've talked at length on this website and podcast about Mezco 112 collective action figures, which are 6-inch scale cloth soft goods clothed figures, where they, like, the stitching of the outfits rival like a 1/6 scale, which are much taller. Anyway, Mezco 112 released images and pre-orders for their Crow figure. And since we're talking about Asian American superheroes, the granddaddy of them all is Brandon Lee. I mean, we were robbed of Brandon Lee as the Asian American martial arts superstar and Asian American superhero we all, especially Gen Xers, grew up with. And they're releasing a figure of Brandon Lee's Crow appearance, and it's like packed to the gills with accessories. It comes with like a leather coat, and it comes with like a tombstone and Eric's guitar and his cat Gabriel and a couple of extra birds that you can stick on the tomb and like 3 head sculpts, and it's a fantastic figure. I wrote about it on the Nerds of Color. I was so hyped for it. So in the age of Shang-Chi, now that we're living in this post-Asian American superhero, we just take some time to think back 30 years. And, you know, it kind of ties it all together because, like, the soundtrack is, like, you know, the gothiest, punkiest soundtrack of all time. One of the best soundtracks of all time. Throw on the Crow soundtrack. Listen to that while you're pre-ordering the Crow figure from Mezco. And just remember what we could have had with Brandon and mourn for his loss. So that's Hard NOC Life for this week. We'll start with you, Raymond. Can people find you online?
No, not really.
All right. Dominic, how can people find you online?
Oh, I'm at Doma, DOMMAH, on Instagram or Twitter, or there's also my YouTube channel at melancholyball.com.
Britney, how can people find you?
You can find me at Hi Britney Monet, and as well as at Naomi Podcast to listen to both Naomi Podcasts, The Backlog of Black Lightning, and also The Lituation Room. So 3 podcasts in one.
You can follow me on Twitter at The Real Chow, unless you're Simu Lu. Please don't tweet at me. At The Real
tweet, and Simu Lu, tweet at all of us, please. Just.
I'm joking. Simu actually follows me, and this I say it all in jest. At The Real Chow, _real_Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find all of the podcasts. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts. Please give us a rating and review that helps people find the show. Also, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. We are trying to build up our YouTube presence. Give us a like and subscribe, and Hulk smash that subscribe button. Email us, thenerdsocolor@gmail.com. Support us on Patreon, GoFundMe, and buy merch at TeePublic. You could buy these shirts at one point, but it was like a very limited sale. You can't find these shirts anymore. But you can find other cool shirts at teepublic.com. Just go to hardknockmedia.com. It's got links out to everything else. Check out Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And until next time...
Oh, Dave Callahan is from Fresno. I just wanted to mention that. Dave Callahan is from Fresno.
He's from Fresno, Ace?
He's from Fresno.
My mom is
and
from
Britney
Fresno.
also likes the Fresno shoutouts, so I say Fresno when it is Fresno.
Comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the Hard NOC Life, but not the chicken kind. More like the people